Okay, I forgot to start that. So again, just by reviewing our next module, module 5 will be May 1st through the 5th. That's the first thing. The second thing I wanted to let you know about is this enrollment process that Taya is now wanting us to do. And this so you're going to do this for each module. So you'll do this for module 5 and then as well for module 6. Okay, let me blow this up. So again, I sent this to you. So you have these instructions, written instructions in the Facebook Messenger. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of these details here, but I've just noted a few important things. This form is online, so you'll do everything. You'll fill it out online. In fact, I'll pull the form up, okay? And we'll just look at it together briefly here. All right, let me just do this. Okay, let's see. I don't know if you can see this all right. So I just clicked the link that's on the instructions, and you'll see this form. All right, does everybody see that on your screen? The Expositors Academy enrollment form. Okay, so you'll just press that link. It'll bring you to this form, and you'll be asked, just follow the instructions. So you'll put your email address in here, and then you'll choose I am enrolling in a new class. Okay, and that'll be class meaning the module. Okay. Now, there is a thing about tuition, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. Okay, but for now, just click the I'm enrolling in the new class. All right, the second page will just ask you just your basic information, your name. Now, here's one thing you'll need is to have a picture of yourself. They want to have a picture online or in the database. So if you could you'll hit add file, and then you can upload a picture of yourself. Okay, so it can be a selfie. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a portrait. Just a nice, photo of you, JPEG file. You can just upload it here. Okay, so that's a big important thing. So yeah, if you just want to take it on your phone and do it that way, that's fine. It doesn't have to be perfect. As someone once told me when they took my picture, they said, sorry, you cannot fix ugly. So for me, just take whatever picture you can of yourself and upload it, and then just follow the instructions. It asks for the church you attend, your ministry, phone number, address. It's basic information. All right, and then the third page, you'll simply just indicate the program you're interested in is the Diploma in Expository Preaching. All right, you're not doing the biblical studies. You're doing the Expository Preaching program. So just note that. Okay. And then don't worry about this other stuff. You've already been accepted for admission. You're a current student. So all you need to do is just indicate you're doing the Diploma Expository Preaching. Okay. And then the next page is it's indicating you don't have to worry about this because you're already enrolled, but under this one, expository, this is important that you get this correct. Pull up, this is the course you're going to select that you're enrolling in, okay? And notice you're going to pick Expository Preaching 5. Now, Devraj Urs, he's the director for Mindanao, so that's why his name is there. But make sure to pick Expository Preaching 5. That's Module 5, CDO. That's you guys, okay? So there's several options here, so be careful that you pick the correct one, okay? We had some students pick the wrong one, so it's caused some problems. So just pick the CDO. I think it's the only one that says CDO. Yep. So just pick that one, and that's all you need to do. And then the next page. Now this one is speaking about tuition. You can, if you want, to directly deposit tuition for the program which is for us 2,500 pesos, or you can just we'll take care of that when we meet together in May for the module, as we have done in the past. Okay, so you don't have to worry about paying right now. We'll just take care of the tuition during the class. If you would like to pay early, you're more than welcome to, and this is the instructions to do that. All right, but as I said, you don't have to. Okay, but if you do, there's the instructions that are given here. Also, there's also mentioned here the Logos Bible software. You can actually get a subscription and use Logos if you want while you're part of the TEA program. All right, we've made a deal with Logos. They've provided for us accounts so that if you want to use their software, you can do that, and it's only 2,500 pesos for the whole year to use it. Okay, now it's a subscription, so next year, if you don't pay the subscription, you don't get to continue to use the software. But so you can click here and you'll get more information about that and how to enroll and how to do that if you're interested in that. Okay, so again, this is just on the form. There's a link right here that you can click to learn more about this. Logos is very good Bible software. It's a really good deal, actually. 2,500 pesos for the whole year is actually really good for this kind of software. So we just got this last year, this account. So I want to let you know about the opportunity here if you would like to apply that. So again, just click the link here and it'll give you the details of, let's see if I can, of this program. Okay, all the details are here. All right, and how to pay for it and all of that. Okay, now this would not be something you would pay for during the class in person. You would have to do this online. Okay, so if you're interested in that, you can just look at click that link and you can get all the details here, and then it'll tell you how to you can upload copy to pay the tuition, and then you can download the software. There's a basic software package here that you can get. It's a free version. It doesn't have much resources on it though, but if you pay for the online version, you'll have like thousands of commentaries and books and resources to get information from. It's a really good deal, actually. This software, it costs like $1,200 US normally to get the full app, the full program on your computer. Okay, so obviously that's more money than we can pay, but so to get this subscription service where it's just 2,500 pesos per person is quite a deal. Okay, any questions on that?
$1.
What's that?
$1.
Oh no, it's pesos. 2,500 pesos. But notice the library is full of books that would cost you over $25,000 US to buy if you wanted to buy all those books. So you're getting access to thousands of books with this. So it's a really good deal. And the software, the Logos software is good. You can do word studies very easily, and there's a lot of things. Oh, here it is, 2,700 digital resources. All right, there's a PDF here, I guess, that you can access that tells you all the resources. All right, so that's something for you to consider, and that's what's indicated on the form here. If you're interested in doing that, then you can just click yes, subscribe me. And then you can go to that link I showed you that tells you how to do that, right? Okay. So again, that's all on the online enrollment form. Everything's here. Okay. To do that. So then that's if you want to pay for this Logos subscription, you just note it there. If you don't, you just hit no. Okay. If you don't want to get the pay for subscription, if you just want the free version, you can go again to this link, and there's a link here to get the where is it at? This link here gives you can get just the basic free package from Logos. Okay. So that if you just do that, you'd click the free version. If you want to get the subscription version, then hit the subscribe me, and then you can go to the form for that. The next page here, it just talks about uploading your payment receipts. So again, if you pay your tuition ahead of time through the BDO account, then you can just upload your receipt here. If you pay, if the tuition is collected during class like we normally do, that's fine. Then you can just skip this step. All right. We'll come back at the end of class and put the receipt in. All right. So, and I believe actually this should be 2,500 pesos because you're not in you guys are from the older group. So the new students are having to pay the higher amount. Okay. So for preaching 2 to 6, you'll pay 2,500 pesos. And again, normally we collect that during the class, so you don't have to worry about that right now. Okay. And then the same here. If you decided to get the Logos subscription, then just indicate that you paid the 2,500. If you're not getting that, just put in 0. Okay. And then you can upload your receipt for that here, this particular, just add file, and you can upload your receipt for that if you ended up paying for the subscription. Okay. And then note when you paid it. All right. The next page of the online enrollment form, it just has the doctrinal statement for TEA. So just read through this. If you agree with it, just note that here. If you don't, if there's some part you don't agree with, that's fine. Just indicate what part that is. If you go to the full doctrinal statement here, if there's something on that you don't agree with, just note it here. It's okay if you disagree. But unless it's something related to the gospel, but just indicate that here, that you've read the doctrinal statement and if you're in agreement. Okay. That's the only thing you're going to fill out on this page. That's one of the things you'll fill out on this page. And then the standard of conduct, just your agreement, if you affirm that you're going to abide by that. Shouldn't be any problem. It's just that you're going to commit to living a godly life and being above reproach. Okay. How did you hear about this? You guys would just, you've taken the classes before. So you click that. Then the next thing is just indicate what classes you may have already taken. So you guys have taken, preaching 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you can just click those. Okay, next. A lot of this is self-explanatory. Classroom format, we do both, right? In person and online. So I click that one. And then if you have a Facebook page, just enter that. Okay, and then submit. Okay, that's the whole form. So hopefully that makes sense. I did put in writing, I indicated in writing here some of those specific details as you're going through the form. So just as you go through it, if you look at something and you forgot how to do that, I might have a note here that will tell you what to do. If you get stuck, just message me, let me know, and I'll help you with that. But please make sure this week, if you could make sure to fill out that form this week, that would be great, just to go ahead and get enrolled, since we technically have started the class by meeting together. So you can do that. And again, the tuition part, don't worry about until we meet together in person. However, again, if you want to pay it early, go ahead. But I think the church has been helping with that in the previous modules, so I assume that will continue. So don't worry about the tuition part. Unless you want to pay for the Logos subscription, then you would go ahead and pay that in order to get the subscription, and then you could upload your receipt there on the form. Okay. I know that took a little bit of time to go through that, but I just want to make this is something new that Tay is wanting to do, because we're trying to move towards being accredited and actually getting class credit for the course credit for these classes. So as we're moving towards offering a master's degree, we want to do things, the formal things, enrolling in classes and things like that as well. Because if we get accredited, then this course that you're taking you could apply towards a degree if you want to continue on and get a MDiv or a master's of ministry degree once we get accredited. So if you finish this class and get a certificate, it'll count towards several units toward that degree. So Taya is just wanting to get this enrollment process. So you're going to do this again for module 6 as well. So once we finish module 5, then in the summertime, you'll come back around and we'll do the same thing. We'll enroll for module 6. Okay. But for this one, just module 5. All right. So sorry for going through having to deal with the class administration item, but I thought it was important since it's something different than we've done before. And are there any questions that you guys have right now about that? Okay, I think the form is pretty good explanation in the form. So I think if you just read through it and follow it, it should be, you should be okay with that. There's about 7 or 8 pages, so it'll take you a few minutes. It took me about 10 minutes to fill it out. So yeah, if you could do that, and if you do that in the next week, that would be great. If you could try to get that done before we meet next week. All right. Okay, so those were the 2 class items that I wanted to make sure I covered with you guys before we start on today's topic. All right, and just let me give you one more chance. If anybody has a comment or a question before we transition to the topic today. Is everyone, hopefully that's clear what we discussed. Okay, I will take that as a yes. And again, if you get stuck, just feel free to contact me. I'll help you out. All right. With that, then, let's move forward to our discussion today. Your favorite topic, by the way. I know you guys have waited a long time for this. You had to wait through all of Christmas and New Year's. I know you've been very eager for this very session today, because we're going to do diagramming. Yes, I can see your cries of joy and excitement. Kazo's not even there. He just left. Oh, he's back. So we've done a lot before with diagramming. In module 5, we're going to do some more as well. But for the prophetic books, they're also, is it can be helpful to diagram. The epistles is most helpful for diagramming, but the prophetic books, remember, contain a lot of sermons. If you remember, we talked about before that the prophetic books, there's foretelling, telling the future, and there's forthtelling, right? The preaching. And whenever the prophets would preach, that was instructional, right? They would give commands, they would give exhortation, they would give instruction. And so whenever that is done, that's like the epistles, right? The epistles are direct, they're instructional, they'll give exhortation, commands, instruction. And so diagramming is very helpful for epistles to see how each phrase and clause is connected, but also it can often be helpful in prophecy, because if you have a sermon, it's the same kind of form as an epistle. All right. Narratives is not as much, right? We saw that diagramming for narratives is really not as helpful unless it's an instructional portion in the narrative. Like if you're studying a gospel and Jesus gives an instruction, that would be helpful to diagram. But if it's just telling the story, diagramming is not as useful for that. So I only diagram certain things in the narratives, the instructional parts or key dialogue. Poetry, diagramming is very helpful. Even though it's poetic language, it's still, poetry is still instructional. And so diagramming can be very helpful for poetry. Prophecy, it's a mix. You have some in prophecy, you'll have sermons, and those are good to diagram. But then sometimes in prophecy, you'll have more narrative type of feature, like if it's visions being described or something like that. Diagramming won't help you as much there. So you have to use your judgment as to whether a passage that you're studying for a prophetic book, you have to use your judgment to decide, should I diagram this? Will that help me or not? Okay, so we'll talk about that for your passages, because in Zechariah and Revelation, those passages that I assigned you, they are more like a narrative, right? In Zechariah, there are visions being described. Revelation, it's really the same thing. A vision is being described in the passages I assigned you. So you really won't help to diagram the whole passage, but there are certain parts of it I think would help you. So I'll explain that at the end of our session, because I put that in your assignment. For each of you guys, for the Zechariah and Revelation passages, you only have to diagram just a few verses, not the whole thing. Okay, and so I noted those verses for you in the assignment. So I'll show you that when we get to that at the end. But I did want to just do a brief review of the diagramming, just to refresh us, because perhaps you haven't done it in a little while. And then we'll look at an example briefly of that, and then I'll talk about your assignment. But the next assignment, let me just show you in our notes here. In this process, exegetical process for studying prophecy, the first step to read and observe, we talked about that in session 2, which was back before the break. And we talked about assignment 4.9, which is to read and observe the book of Zechariah. Then in session 3, we discussed the background context. And the assignment for that is the background context of Zechariah. So we went over that together. You can go back to that session if you need to review. The literary context or contextual flow of the book, we discussed in session 4. That was assignment 4.11, which is the context, literary context of Zechariah. That was that assignment. You can go there for that detail. And then in the last 2 sessions, we went over the prophetic analysis of the passage. All right, and that was for assignment 4.12. prophetic analysis of your assigned passage in Zechariah. All right. Again, our focus so far has been on the Zechariah passage. Remember, you also have the Revelation passage that you've been assigned. So those first 4 steps we've covered in the previous sessions. We also went through these 4 steps for our example in class when we were together back in October. When we gathered together, we discussed these 4 steps and used Haggai, if you remember, as our example there. In these sessions that we've been doing on Zoom since then, in November, part of December, when we went through these, we used Obadiah as the example. Okay. Now today, we're looking at the diagram of the passage. That's the session 7 today, and it's assignment 4.13, which includes the diagram, but also the textual observations and the word studies. Now, again, these are nothing different, nothing new than what we've done for epistles, for narratives, for poetry. All right. So these are going to be essentially the same steps. The diagram, again, will be sort of like narrative. We're just going to pick certain parts of the passage to diagram, but the observations and the word studies, those are going to be the same that we've done before. Okay. And then the next assignment 4.14, we'll be doing the resources, the exegetical idea, again, the same steps that we've done before. Nothing new. Okay. So what I'd like to do for as we meet these next 5 or 6 or 7 weeks together, what I'd like to have us do, my plan is to do this. Let's see. Let me show this to you. Here's a schedule of what I'd like to do for our times together. So we've already done, this is session 7 today, okay? And we'll be talking about the diagramming and hopefully maybe observations a little bit, we'll see. But that's for our class today. This actually should be, yeah, 20. Oh, this should be the 31st, huh? Today's the 31st. I got to change these dates. What I'd like to do is we'll spend the next couple of weeks on a couple more assignments. I'm going to do a review of Revelation in a couple of weeks. Well, we'll just look at the background of Revelation. So I'll help you actually with your background context for Revelation. So I want to introduce the book to you, sort of look at the structure of the book, its background. So that'll be in a couple of weeks. And then we'll talk about preaching prophecy. And then I'll spend a few weeks going through some of the key passages, just talking about eschatology, talking about the study of end times. I want us to look at a couple of these key passages and see what we can learn about these key end times prophecies from those particular texts. Okay. So that'll be sort of a bonus things that we'll talk about together. But basically, we'll be covering, we will have covered all of the key written assignments for your Zechariah passage by next week or the week following. All right, we'll review those together. And they're going to be the same. It'll be the same for your Revelation passage. All right, so these assignments will be the exact same for both your Zechariah and your Revelation passages. Okay. So this is the plan, Lord willing, going forward on what we want to cover. Okay. All right. Questions? We're okay? Everyone's okay? All right. I know this is exciting stuff. But contain yourself. Don't get too excited. All right. Okay. Well, let's jump right in. Actually, I'm going to need to, let me do this. let's move to the diagram of the passage, but I'm going to need to, forgot I got to do one thing. So if you can give me 1 minute, I'm going to go take care of something. I'll be right back. Okay, so you can take just a short little break, stretch break here. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm going to pause it. Okay. All right. All right, again, so we're going to look at the 4th step here, diagramming, and the actual procedure, again, is going to be exactly the same that we've done before. It just will be more selective about what part of the passage we would diagram. But if you remember, the diagram is just a visual picture of the author's, what the author is saying, and that picture just identifies the link between the phrases and clauses in the paragraph. And so the process in forming a block diagram just understands that every book is made up of units of thought. Okay, so if the book is an epistle, each unit of thought is represented by a paragraph. If the book is, or the passage is a poem, then it's made up of stanzas. Each unit of thought is a stanza. If we're looking at a narrative, each unit of thought is represented by scenes within the narrative. Okay. Now, for an epistle or for a sermon, for an instructive portion of scripture, again, each unit of thought is expressed in a paragraph. A paragraph is made up of 1 or more sentences. And if you remember, each sentence is made up of phrases and clauses. All right. And I just represent that here visually. So if we're looking at an epistle, for an example, we have a paragraph, or we could also say, if we're looking at, or a sermon, it's made up of paragraphs, right? And then each paragraph is made up of sentences, at least one. And then each sentence is made up of phrases and clauses within the sentence. And if you remember, there's just the difference between a phrase and a clause is the clause has a subject and a verb. A phrase does not have both the subject and a verb. Okay? It may have a verb, but if it doesn't have a subject, then it's considered a phrase. A clause actually has a subject and a verb. It's describing what a subject is or what a subject is doing. That's a clause. Okay? So again, this is just all by way of review. We've looked at this before. And then if you'll remember, the process to make a diagram, again, a block diagram or structural diagram, is 4 steps. All right? And the first step is really to identify, and I would say just identify the first independent clause in the sentence. There may be more than one, but at least identify the first one. As our brother, Pastor Arn, said a moment ago, he was thinking about the main sentence. We can call that an independent clause. Remember, again, a clause has a subject and a verb. An independent clause can stand alone, gives a complete thought, right? Pastor Allen preached a sermon. That's a complete thought. Okay. That's an independent clause. A dependent clause, again, is a clause, so it has a subject and a verb, but it's dependent. That is, it modifies another word in the sentence. So if we were to say, who preached a sermon, or the man who preached the sermon, that's not a complete thought. That word who tells us it's dependent. Or when he preached a sermon, well, the when tells us that it's dependent. It's connected to something else. All right. So if we just say the man preached a sermon, that's an independent clause, okay, because it can stand alone. It gives a complete thought. It's a man preached. What did he preach? A sermon. But if you say when the man preached a sermon, or after the man preached a sermon, these are dependent, because they're being introduced by this word like when or after. So that's telling us it's linked to something else in the sentence, in the paragraph. Okay? Or who preached the sermon? If this is not a question, okay? If there's a question mark, then that would be an independent clause. But if it's not, if it's just who preached the sermon, this who is linking it to something else in the sentence. Okay? So for example, when the man preached the sermon, the congregation was blessed. Okay? There's two clauses here in this sentence. One of them's dependent, the other's independent. Which one is the independent clause in this sentence?
The congregation was blessed.
Yes, very good. The congregation was blessed is independent. It stands alone. When the man preached the sermon, that's dependent. That's modifying was blessed. Because it says when the congregation was blessed. The congregation was blessed when the man preached the sermon. Okay? After the man preached a sermon, the congregation was blessed. Same thing here. Okay? Congregation was blessed is my independent clause. Or you could say after the man preached the sermon, he took a nap. Okay? He took a nap is independent here. This clause is dependent because of that word after. It's connecting it to he took. When did he take a nap? After he preached the sermon. All right, so you have a clause contains a subject and a verb, but it can be an independent, that is standalone, or dependent. All right, and often you can know if it's dependent because it's going to be introduced by another word. Okay, in this case, when or after or who. All right, or as the man preached the sermon, the congregation was blessed, or whenever. Okay, so there's usually there'll be a connector word that introduces the clause that will tell you it's dependent. All right. So the first step is identify the first independent clause you see in the sentence. I'll just add that. And it's usually near the beginning of the paragraph, right? That's typically where you can find it. And we also might call that the main sentence. All right. Then the second step is once you've identified the main sentence or the first independent clause, then look for the other phrases and clauses. Identify those. And this is where our good friends, the connector words, come on the scene. All right. This is where they are now important. All right. And you'll remember for conjunctions, we had the coordinating conjunctions, and, boy, and, nor, but, or, yet. Then we had this most common subordinating conjunctions that begin with those particular letters, F suabit. Then we have prepositions. The 9 most common prepositions are at, with, in, for, from, by, on, of, to. The relative pronouns, there's only 3 of those. And then we had the more difficult ones of the participles, which is a verb with an ing or ed ending. And the way you can determine if it's a participle is look to see if there's a subject or an article or a verb of being. If you don't see any of those in front of it, so for example, if you see the preaching of the word, okay, this is not a participle because there's an article in front of it, okay? Or if you see he preached the word, okay? Even though there's an ed ending, it's not a participle because there's a subject, he. Or you could have, he is preaching the word, all right? Okay, we have preach with ing, but notice there's a verb of being in front of it, and there's a subject. So it's not a participle. But if you say, the man, the pastor, let's see. Stood at the pulpit preaching the word. Okay, now in this case, preaching has no subject, no article, and no verb of being, so it is a participle. Okay, so that's what you look for with the participles. So the conjunctions, prepositions, relative pronouns, and participles, those are all the connector words, which again, those tell us, those identify for us each phrase and clause. And then sometimes you may not see a connector word, but the translation may use a punctuation mark like a comma or a period or a semicolon or a dash to indicate a different phrase or clause. So sometimes we won't see a connector word, but the translation will give us a punctuation mark that will help us. All right. So those are the 5 things to look for to identify the remaining phrases and clauses. And then you want to state how each phrase and clause functions in the sentence. That's the 3rd step. So first, look for the first independent clause in the paragraph. Second, identify the remaining phrases and clauses in the paragraph by looking for the connector words. Third is to then state how does each phrase and clause function in the sentence. Is it modifying a verb or a noun? What word is it modifying and how is it modified? Okay, and that's where we had that list of questions to ask. That what question does this particular phrase or clause answer? If it answers why, when, where, how, or a purpose or a result, conditional statement, then that's going to modify a verb. If it's who or which or how many or what kind, that's going to modify a noun. Okay, so that just is helpful to indicate what possible word it could modify. Okay, so that's the 3rd step. Then the 4th step is simply place that phrase or clause underneath the word it modifies. All right. Okay, so those are the 4 steps that processed for coming up with the diagram. And what we're going to do is I want to go through just a few verses from Obadiah. This is one of the minor prophets, and just use it as an example just to go through these steps together. So I want to give you guys a chance to do that yourself for these particular for the diagramming process. So what I'm going to have us do, we'll read these 3 verses, and then I'll have you guys, we'll just go through the steps. I'll give you a few minutes to do it yourself, and then we'll come together, do it together, okay? But let me ask, Kazot, could you read verses 10 to 12 here? This is just Obadiah, verses 10 to 12.
Because of violence to your brother Jacob, you will be covered with shame, and you will be cut off forever. On the day that you stood aloof, on the day that strangers carried off his wealth, and foreigners entered his gate and cast lots for Jerusalem, you too were as one of them. Do not gloat over your brother's day, the day of his misfortune, and do not rejoice over the sons of Judah in the day of their destruction. Yes, do not boast in the day of their distress.
All right, great. So I'll ask you, Kazot, let's just start off with this one together. Can you find the first independent clause here in this paragraph? What do you think it is?
You will be covered with shame.
Yes. Good. Very good. Why is it not this first part here that I highlighted?
From
How
the
come?
word because.
Yeah. We have the word because and there's no verb.
Yes, there's no verb.
Okay. So for both of those reasons, this because of violence to brother Jacob cannot be it's not even a clause, so it can't be independent, but you will be covered with shame. That stands alone and can be independent. And we can notice, and you will be cut off forever is also an independent clause, because notice that coordinating conjunction and it connects
word and.
to, yes, grammatically connects to grammatically
To equal.
Very
To
good.
equal.
Okay, so in this case, we can actually see two independent clauses. Now, there may be more independent clauses in the next verses, but we'll just identify those as we go forward. All right. Okay, so now what I want you guys to do, does this make sense? Do you guys see that? These are the two independent clauses. Now, the second step is to identify the remaining phrases and clauses in the sentence. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, let me put this, here's what I'll do. I'm going to have you guys just do this on your own. I'll give you a few minutes for you to identify the connector words in this passage. Okay, so I'll leave this here. I'll leave it up. And then I'll put the common connector words next to it. All right. Hopefully you can see both of those there. Okay, so go ahead and take a few minutes and identify the connector words. Here, I'll just give you a minute to reread it, and then I'll call on you guys. Each of you will take a verse, and I'll ask you for those connector words. But just take a look here, and then we'll come back together in a couple minutes. So just have you just read through those three verses again a couple times, see if you can find the connector words. Okay. All right. Let's just go through and see if we can identify the the connector words here because those are going to help us to see the different phrases and clauses. So let's start with Brilio. If you could, in verse 10, tell me what connector words you see. And remember, some connector words could be more than one word. All right. So they're not always just one word. They could be two words sometimes, but Brilio, go ahead and unmute yourself and just say in verse 10, what connector words do you see?
In verse 10, sir, because
Yes.
conjunction.
Okay. Because, or really it's because of, actually,
Violence.
yeah. Let me highlight. All right. Because of one, how about
Violence.
violence? Okay. That's just a regular noun. It's not a connector word.
Because, sir. Because of.
Because of its connector word. All right. Any others? Verse 10.
To your brother Jacob. To, sir.
Do. Yes. That's a preposition. Very good. Any others?
And verse 10, and, sir.
And yes. What is that?
Conjunction.
Yeah. Coordinating, right? It's part of and boy over here.
I think, sir, included with him, preposition, with.
With. Good. You see any others in verse 10?
I think all of.
Yep. That's all of them. Now, you may see off and think that's a preposition, but the preposition is actually of, one F. That's a preposition. Off is part of the verb here, to cut off. Okay. So yes, very good. That's all of the connector words in verse 10. All right, Pastor Allen, I'm going to give you verse 11. What connector words do you see in verse 11? Make sure to mute yourself, unmute yourself, Pastor Allen.
The first is on the day, on, then that.
Okay, on is a preposition.
On is preposition. Yeah.
Okay, and then what's the next one?
What's the next one? That.
Okay, what is that?
What is that? Relative pronoun.
Excellent.
Excellent.
That's a relative pronoun, so that. All right, any others?
Any others? And again, foreigners. And foreigners entered his gate. The end there.
Good.
Good. And then another end, cast lots.
Okay, good. What kind of connector word is that?
What kind of connector word is that? Conjunctions.
Good. Coordinating.
Good. Coordinating. Yes, coordinating. And then prepositions for.
Yes.
Yes. Of.
You were one of. Yes. Preposition.
Yes,
Good.
yes. Preposition. Good.
I see one more.
One more.
Two more.
Two more.
You were
As
one of them. Yeah, that's
one of them.
okay. We'll highlight that.
Okay, we'll highlight that.
That one is a tricky one, I think, a little bit. There's two more that I see.
Two more that I see. And then, which is it? And cast lots for Jerusalem.
Yeah, we have another.
Yeah, we have another.
In verse 11.
Verse 11. Verse 11. Okay.
Yeah,
On.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's a,
Yes. That.
that, yep,
And then the that following the
Yep.
day. Yes.
good, okay. All right, verse 12, Pastor Arn, let's have you do that verse 12.
Pastor Arn, have you do that. Verse 12, do not gloat over your brother's day, the day of his misfortune, and do not rejoice over the sons of Judah in the day of their destruction. Yes, do not boast in the day of their distress. I believe so, Pastor, it started with independent sentence. You do not gloat over your brother's day. Open close parenthesis, you, the subject.
Okay, yep, this is, you're right, this is independent clause. Do you see any connector words in this verse?
How about over, Pastor? Is that connector words?
Yeah, normally over is actually a connector word. We'll highlight that in this preposition. Okay, you see any more?
And
Yes, another coordinating conjunction.
I also repeat over
Yep, another over here.
and then in.
Good.
Sorry.
Of,
Pastor.
yes.
In, then of, then in. Of.
Okay. Yep, I think that's it. Okay,
Yes,
very good.
Pastor.
Very good.
Thank you.
So this is what we would do then at this point, right? We've identified the connector words, then we simply just break up each connector word is introducing a phrase or clause. So all I'm doing is breaking it up into each of the phrases and clauses. Now, there's a few places here where the connector word actually was not put in. We'll just,
How about the commas, Pastor?
yes, exactly. In this case, some of the connector words are not here, but we do have the commas. So for example, because of violence to your brother Jacob, notice there's a comma here. All right, so that normally would indicate a break. So that actually is there's no connector word here, but the punctuation helps us. And then we see that again. Do not gloat over your brother's day, and then a comma there. Oops. That indicates the end of that phrase. Okay, the day was do not rejoice there, and yes, do not boast day of their distress. Now, Alan had mentioned you two. Oh yeah, so here we have a dash, which is another indicator of a break. Punctuation. Okay. Even though there's not a connector word there, for Jerusalem and you two were. This is not a phrase here or a clause. Okay, this doesn't make sense. It's for Jerusalem is a phrase, and then we have you two were. Now, as one of them. Now, this word as, often it functions like a conjunction, as Pastor Allen indicated, but sometimes that word as can mean like. As can sometimes be the same as like. So how will we know if it is? Well, put the word like here and see if it makes sense. You two were like one of them. Does that make sense?
Simile.
It does. Yeah, like a simile. So here I think as is not functioning as a conjunction. It's acting like another way that the word as can function is the same as the meaning of the word like. So I would put this on the same line in this case. It's not functioning as a connector word here in this particular instance. It's just giving a comparison. You two were like or as one of them. Okay? Because otherwise it'd be you two were. Were what? There's not an idea given there. You two were as one of them, like one of them. Okay, in this case. All right. Does that make sense, guys? I know this is English. You have that. Some words can function differently. The word that can have different ways that it functions. The word so, the word as. So that's just one of those things you just need to be aware of when we're dealing with English. Now we want to identify whether these are phrases or clauses. Okay. And for that, come back up to Kazot. I'll just have you do a few of these. Because of violence to your brother Jacob. Because of violence. Is that a phrase or a clause?
A phrase.
Okay. How do you know that?
The word because of.
Okay, because of, and remember a phrase does not have a subject and a verb. Okay,
Yes.
and there's no verb in this, so we know it's a phrase. All right, good. How about the next? To your brother Jacob, is that a phrase or a clause? Kazo.
A phrase.
Yep, no verb. Okay,
No
how about
verb.
the next one? You will be covered. Phrase or clause?
A clause.
Very good. It's a clause, and we already said it's independent, right? It can stand alone.
Yes.
Okay. How about with shame? Phrase or clause? Is there any verb?
Phrase.
Yeah, phrase. There's no verb. You will be cut off forever. Phrase or clause?
A clause.
Okay. There's a verb, and we said, is it independent or dependent?
An independent clause.
Very good. Excellent. All right. Brilio, I'll have you keep going. What about the next one? On the day. Is that a phrase or a clause?
Phrase, sir.
Yes. No verb. That you stood aloof. Phrase or clause?
Phrase, sir. Phrase.
Okay. Well, let's look. Do we have a verb?
There is, sir. Stood.
Yeah, there is a verb. And is there a subject?
It is a clause.
Yeah, it's a clause. Now, is it dependent or independent?
Independent, sir.
Okay. Notice the first word
The word.
that there.
That.
That tells us that it's actually dependent because it's introduced by this word that. So it's describing the day that you stood aloof. So this is actually dependent. Okay. It's not standing alone. All right. On the day, you already did that. Phrase or clause?
Phrase.
Phrase. All right. Now here we go again. That strangers carried off. Is that a phrase?
Dependent clause.
It's a dependent clause. And foreigners entered his gate. Is that a phrase or clause?
Dependent clause.
Okay. How do you
Because
know
of-
it's dependent?
There is conjunction and.
Yes. Very good. So it's connecting this clause to this clause. And because this clause is dependent, therefore this clause must also be dependent. Okay, very good observation. How about the next one? And cast lots.
Dependent clause, sir.
Okay, now how do you know it's a clause?
There is a verb, sir, cast.
Okay, where's the subject though?
Because there is an and equal with connected in the above phrase.
Yeah,
Above dependent clause.
it's the same subject as the previous clause, right? It just sometimes you don't have to put the subject twice. So it's foreigners entered his gate and foreigners cast lots. Okay, now
Yes,
in this
sir.
case, foreigners was not written, but that's the subject. All right, and because this is a dependent clause, therefore this will be a dependent clause. Very good. For Jerusalem, phrase or clause.
Phrase, sir.
Good. Now, how about you two were as one? Phrase or clause.
Dependent clause, sir.
Okay. All right. Now, there's the
It's
verb
like-
were, subject you.
Yes, sir. There is a subject and a verb, I think.
Yes. And here, I believe there's no conjunction connecting them. So I think this might be an independent clause. Okay.
Yes, sir. There is
Not-
possibility, sir.
Yeah. So we'll put independent or dependent. We'll think about that a little more. Now, of them, phrase or clause.
Phrase, sir.
Yes. Good. Okay. Pastor Allen, I'm going to ask you to do the next few here. Phrase or clause. Do not gloat.
Do not gloat. Do not gloat. That's independent clause.
Yeah. Now, how do we know it's a clause?
How do we know it's a clause?
Do we see a verb?
See a verb?
What's the,
Gloat. I think it's
what's the,
do not.
yeah, this is all a verb here, right? Do not
This is
gloat.
all a verb here,
Yes.
right? Do not
And then the
gloat.
subject is implied, right? It's a command, so
Subject
you.
is implied, right? It's a command, so you.
Okay. And yes, I think you're correct. It's independent.
Yes, I think you're correct.
Okay. Now, how about the next one? Over your brother's day. That's
The
the
next
phrase
one,
or clause.
over your brother's day. That's the phrase or clause. That's a phrase.
Yes. No verb.
Yes. No verb. Yeah.
All right. Now the day.
All right. Now the day. It's phrase.
Yep. Of his misfortune.
Yeah. His misfortune.
Whoops.
Another phrase.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do not rejoice.
Do not rejoice. That's dependent.
Dependent
I
clause.
think independent clause.
Yeah. Independent. Because notice
Because notice
and here, right?
and here, right?
So it's connecting this with
So it's
this.
connecting this with this.
All right. Good. Let's have
All right, good. Let's
have Pastor Arn do the rest here.
Mr. Arn do the rest here.
All right. Thanks.
Over the sons in praise
Okay. Phrase. Yep.
of
No
Judah,
verb.
of Judah praise,
Very good.
in the day praise,
All right.
of their destruction praise.
Ah, this is easy. How about this one?
Then next, you do not boast is close.
Okay. Good. What kind of clause do you think?
I believe it is do not rejoice. Yes, do not boast. I believe so. Pastor is independent. You do not boast.
Yep, I think you're right. Okay, in the day,
Praise,
yes, of their distress.
praise.
All right, good. Very good. Okay, well, we'll have to pick it up here next time because we just ran out of time. It's lunchtime. But that's the second step. Now, the next step will be to indicate how do these phrases and clauses function? That is, what word do they modify and how? So we'll go over that together next week.
But excuse me, sir.
Yeah,
Can I ask a question, sir?
of course.
And
Yes.
related to our assignments, what
Yes.
is the main sentence, sir?
So the main sentence would be, or the first independent clause would be,
First,
you will be covered with shame. That we saw that up here, right?
yes, sir.
Okay. So that's the first independent clause, or we would call that the main sentence. But we also notice there's a few other independent clauses that I'll highlight here.
Follow-up question, sir.
What's that?
Since you will be covered with shame, then there is an meaning. It is a equivalent weight of idea. So
Yes.
it cannot be considered to main sentence, sir.
Yeah. Yes,
Main,
they are. You're right. So you diagram it like this. You will be covered with shame and you will be cut off forever. And then because of is why. Because of violence to your brother Jacob. That's modifying will be covered. It's saying why you will be covered. Okay. And you will be cut off forever. So those are the two main sentences. And then this is modifying will be covered and will be cut off. Those are the two verbs. But yeah, there's two independent clauses here, or you could say two main sentences if you want. Does that answer your question?
thank you, sir. Thank you.
So for the assignment, did I pull it up here? Okay. 413. Okay, here's the assignment. Basically, for this assignment, I'm simply this is on Canvas. It goes through the diagram we've just done. So it goes through those steps. Okay. So we just did steps 1 and 2 here. All right. We'll go through steps 3 and 4 next week, but this just gives the example in the assignment. And then there's 3 parts: the diagram, the textual observation, and then the word study. Okay, so it gives an example from Obadiah. And then after that, I give you the space to do this assignment for your passage. And now notice I indicated for your passage what verses to diagram. Okay, so if your passage is Zechariah 2, you don't have to diagram the whole passage, just diagram verses 7 to 13. If your passage is from Zechariah 4, just diagram verses 6 to 10. You don't have to do all 14 verses. Okay, I just picked out a few for you to diagram. All right, and then it said identify the main sentence, or really, again, you could say the first independent clause. Okay. All right. So that's already on Canvas. You can download this and start working on it. Next week, we'll go through the rest of the Obadiah diagram for you guys, and then look at the observations and word studies briefly, just to remind us of that, okay? All right. Any questions or on anything we've discussed this morning? The class,
Pastor,
Yeah.
Pastor, before we part, please consider in your prayers. My father was asleep at the floor
oh,
yesterday, yata.
okay. Is he at home or did he have to go to the hospital?
Actually, my brother and sister there did not yet decide